Okay, let's start, just talk about your papers a little bit. Let me start by asking you, do you have any questions? I've had some questions on things like endnotes versus footnotes. How often should you endnote? Generally, you can't over endnote. You can under endnote or footnote. So when you want to think this way, when you're writing a paper, if there's information there or a thought or analysis that you didn't come up with, you need to give credit to the person who did, okay? Otherwise, that's plagiarism. So plagiarism is not just, well, if I just change 2 words, it's still their thought, give credit. And where you don't always have to do endnotes and footnotes is what I would call on very basic encyclopedic information. You know, he was born in Kansas. Oh, footnote out of, Wikipedia, blah, blah, blah. That's an unimportant fact, okay? It doesn't have a point when you're not stealing information from someone or a thought from someone. You gotta think about it that way. This is information that I would no way know. Like we could all talk, would you have to endnote that Donald Trump wants to build a wall, between us and Mexico? No, it's common knowledge at this point. It's not like, well, I discovered that about him. Or someone discovered that about him and nobody else knew that. That would be new. Now, if you were to say Donald Trump doesn't have character because actually he has mafia ties, blah, 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 in Las Vegas and Atlantic City, and it was this guy that did this. Oh, really? You got to prove that to me. And you need to, if you're going to prove that, that's where you need to endnote. Okay? That's an endnoting type fact. So just always make sure that you're giving credit to someone if it's important information that you wouldn't commonly know, or if it's analysis that you wouldn't, that you weren't able to come up with on your own. Okay. Now you might have some of your own analysis, and by the way, if you have your own analysis, you need to support it. Nobody's interested in just your opinion. An opinion is different. I think we should all vote for Hillary Clinton. Why? I don't know. I think a woman should be president. That's an opinion. You gotta give me whys. Well, here's why, okay, behind something. So you want to think it's a researched opinion. It's a supported opinion, okay, is how you want to approach your paper. So make it on. So let me give you some examples. Because I want you to, what I don't want is a regurgitation of just information. I want you to analyze the information that you're gathering. What do you think about it? So here's how I can illustrate that a little bit to you. Donald Trump proposes we should build a wall. Who thinks that's a good idea or just think about that. What do you think? Good or bad idea to build a wall between us and Mexico to stop illegal immigrants? Should we do that or shouldn't we do it? What do you think? Tell me, what do you think? Should we build a wall?
Probably not, because I think they'd still get in somehow.
What do you think?
I think they'd still be able to get in.
Okay, it won't work. Okay? So here's what you think. They're going to build a wall is the fact. Trump wants to build a wall. Your analysis comes to, it's not going to work. Now, if you just say, it's not going to work, it's a dumb idea, that's just your opinion. Tell me why that's your opinion. Well, you don't think it's going to work. Why not? Will people dig under it, get around it?
They could, airplanes or just...
Okay. So you start to talk about why that's not a good idea. Okay? Why else might a wall not be a good idea? Think about it.
Costs a lot of money to build, a lot of time, a lot of labor.
Okay, so how much is this wall going to cost? So here's why else. So Trump, I think, estimates the wall at $6 billion. We're going to build a wall. So other people estimate $25 billion. So you start to say, well, we're going to build a $25 billion wall that people can still tunnel under, take a boat around, fly over, bribe someone to get through. You're going to have to maintain the wall to some degree. Oh, okay. See, now you're thinking. Okay, here's another one. Question. Should we make Muslims, right? We just have another terrorist attack in Brussels. Very weird that yesterday there was a terrorist attack in Brussels, and over 100 people were injured, over 30 people killed. It seems like it's ISIS, so it's, again, radicalized Muslims that are doing this. There's a call for response to this, a global response. We haven't really had this hit us. I mean, we had 9/11, but we're not having this regularly. Yeah, you have Boston Marathon runners, but what happens in Philadelphia, you know, somebody you know is on those things. Hey, what are we gonna do about the Muslims, about the Muslim problem? So what's one of the things, again, I'm not trying to pick on Donald Trump just because I'm aware of these arguments, and he's not the only one. Cruz, I think, said the same thing. We should make sure all Muslims are registered, special registration in the United States, and we should start to put a police presence in all Muslim communities. So that's what we should start to do. We better get on these Muslims before they do this in our country. Okay? Give me an argument against that, or for it. Should we make Muslims register? Should we have a police presence in there? Should we start to bug their mosque? Right? Because what they're Trump and I'll go after Cruz, or I'll not go after, but Cruz on this as well. What's he saying? We've got to stop radicalization before it happens. So in America, do we do this? Do we start to say, Muslims, you have to specially register. No Muslims can come into our country. Muslims are going to be monitored. We're going to have an increased police presence in the Muslim community. What would be the problems with the policy like that? And by the way, I don't really think I have an opinion.
The international ridicule.
Okay, you're going to have the international ridicule, right? There's prejudice. So, but what else? What if the international community starts supporting us? Because I mean, Europe's going to they're getting more and more steamed about this. So I don't, you don't think about Belgium fighting like we fight in the Middle East, and yet they're getting attacked. France tries not to fight anybody most of the time, and yet they're having, a terrorist attack. So what do and I just read an op-ed about this recently, or an opinion about it. So what else? What's another problem with that? So right, we have a problem. Think about, let's say Trump becomes president, okay? And he builds a wall, so we have a Trump presidency. And you're going to do Trump's foreign policy. Trump's foreign policy is to broker a deal between Israel and Palestine. And that we're going to be neutral players in that. Now, he's backing off his statements. He said something about this, and he's coming back and re-saying it. So it's brokering a peace deal. He wants to build a wall. He wants to monitor Muslims. Okay? Maybe he at one point alluded to using nuclear weapons to go after ISIS. And he's backed off that too. But let's say he said that, and we're going to go nuclear on ISIS. Okay? Now I say, write a paper on this. Write a paper on this guy and what he's doing. Well, you'd have to understand facts here. What's the deal? What's our historical position with Israel? What's going on with Palestine? You have to understand what's going on in that. Okay, he wants to have a peace treaty. Can we do that? Is it any of our business? Blah, blah, blah. There's one. He wants to build a wall. How much will that cost? Will it be effective? Okay? He wants to monitor Muslims. Any constitutional problems with that? Right? So even in Brussels, where they just had an attack, somebody's come out and saying, they're talking about having armed guards and all these type of things in the subways, and you're going to have identity papers. If you ever watch old movies, remember they always say, where are your identity papers? Nobody asked you that question, did they? Well, you get to go between states. Nobody's asking for your identity papers. And those kind of, oh no, you better have travel papers. You better have this. You better have that. Well, that's a police state. Okay? So all of a sudden, monitoring Muslims, you've got constitutional issues. And by the way, they did a study after 9/11. In New York, they tried to infiltrate the Muslim community. They bugged. They increased police presence. They did all these intelligence things. They said they didn't get one piece of operational intelligence through all of it. Actually, what they did is they said most of the leads to terrorists, you know where they come from? Muslims. It's Muslims that are concerned about what the terrorists are doing too. So most of the leads against terrorists comes from the Muslims community. They actually said when New York went after the Muslim community to go after it, it actually, those leads dried up because now people felt like, hey, I was on your side, but now I'm being treated with suspicion. I'm not talking anymore. They actually were doing plants in mosques. They were recruiting people. They were then starting to pressure young people. You better tell on friends. You better tell. And it just made the whole community sort of back off. They actually said their intelligence went down, not up. Now, what's the goal? Your goal is to stop terrorist attack. It's a great goal, I think. Right? This is the whole idea of, I think he's talked about torture. Was this him? Unless this was Cruz, it was, I think it was Trump. It might have been Cruz, so if I'm wrong here, I'm not trying to pick on someone. You know, and in one sense you say, would it be worth it to torture a guy if you knew they were about to blow up a city with a nuclear weapon? In my mind, yeah. Problem is, basically we have no evidence that torture works. That's the problem. So there's not a lot of evidence there. And then 2, you have constitutional issues. 3, you have human rights issues. So you have human rights. There was actually a movie that Bruce Willis was in. I'm not commending any movie here, so don't go watch it. All right, that's not what I'm saying. It was about a terrorist attack in New York. Bruce Willis is actually the general, and Denzel Washington's in the movie as well. He's with the FBI. The FBI headquarters get blown up. So now, and what they do is they round up Muslims. Well, actually, one of the guys in the FBI is a Muslim. They round up his kid. His kid gets put in there. And this guy, who's a loyal FBI agent, is like, he's starting to get upset. And what? There's a constitution, and actually Bruce Willis says, hey, you don't want me to come in and take control as a general. But he does. And then they torture a guy, and they do different things and try to press for intelligence. Well, there's human rights violations, there's constitutional rights violations, there's international law. So you start to evaluate this and say, so if you're saying, I'm writing on President Trump and I'm doing his foreign policy, what do I got to get? Well, I got to understand what it is. I got to get the facts. Okay? Now, some of these facts, I pick them up to the news. I don't have to resource everything. But the more I get into the cost of the wall, how do you know how much it's going to cost? I better endnote that. Okay? To say here, to monitor Muslims could threaten the Constitution, well, you can figure that out on your own. You probably don't need to endnote that. To say torture doesn't work, you probably do need to endnote that. How do you know torture doesn't work? Have you been in? Have you tortured anybody? No. Have you been tortured? You don't know that. I don't know that. So I can sit here and say, yeah, torture doesn't work. You can say, Mr. Boettcher, I know you're a teacher and you're wearing a suit today, so you're looking pretty good. How the heck do you know that torture doesn't work? Great question. Ultimately, I just told you something that you don't. You're trusting me. If I'm writing a paper, I better have facts behind it that torture doesn't work. Now, if I heard you say this, so there's different things. What are your facts? What's this guy want to accomplish? And for Trump, you say, what's his worldview? We're going to make America great again. We're going to make America strong again. So what's he doing all the time? So Obama's in Cuba. Obama look how embarrassed he is. The guy didn't even greet him. So, now this is politics that they're playing. So Castro greeted the Pope when the Pope came. Greeted him at the airport. He didn't even greet Obama. He's trying to make a point. Obama has let the country get weak, and the country has lost respect globally. I'm going to rebuild respect globally. We're going to be strong. You're not going to mess with me. You mess with me, you get it. So he's talking real tough. Okay? So you start to think, what's he want to do? What's the vision? Here's his policies. Okay? Well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? And then support I don't want just your opinion. I think it's a dumb idea. Why do you think it's why? You gotta tell me why. So be able to answer the question, why is it a bad idea? Or it's a good idea. Why? So there's a lot of people, Christians tend to love Ronald Reagan without thinking, I think, sometimes. I'm not being critical of Ronald Reagan, but they love him in I think what I would call an undiscerning way. We love Ronald Reagan. Why? Well, he built the military, okay? What do you understand about that? Why do you think it was a good policy? Why? Tell me why. What do you think it's a good policy? So that's what you're writing about, okay? So why? So what and why? This is the what. Now you're saying good or bad. You're analyzing it. Well, why do you think good or bad? So yeah, I think the wall's a dumb idea. It's just too expensive. $25 billion to build a wall that brings in no income. And what should we do with immigrants? That's an opinion, right? Well, how would you support your opinion? So I could sit here and say, I think we should amnesty all immigrants, $1,000 fee to get you in, and then make an easy work program, and here's why I think that's what we should do. That's my opinion, right? I think we should do this. Here's why I think we should do this. If I only tell you here's what I think we should do, that's what's called a biased opinion. Okay? Support your opinion. Support your opinion. All right? That's how you're trying to make an argument on things. And in some ways you do the same thing. Why do you believe Christ died? Because I just want to be a Christian. Have you thought? Have you thought about it? So C.S. Lewis was thoughtful, right? Who is Jesus? Liar? Lunatic? Telling the truth. You see, he's giving you an argument. He's either a liar because he's made claims about himself that are untrue. And ultimately people die for those claims, which means you're an evil person. If somebody came in here and said, I'm the Messiah, I'm Jesus come back, and I'm here, and by the way, since I'm here, you should all die for me, and people start dying for you, like, you died for a crazy person, a liar, that's evil. Or he's crazy. He had a messianic complex, there's people around that still think I'm the Messiah. You always get, and you call them crackpots. Well, maybe Jesus was a crackpot. Or he was telling the truth. Make an argument on each one. Well, why is he not a liar? Why do I think he's not a liar? Why do I think he's not crazy? Why do I think he's telling the truth? Resurrection. So if anybody see the movie Risen in here? Just you, okay? Right? You can see what the Roman Tribune was doing. He's going through evidence in his mind. Okay, it was a great movie, by the way. It's only playing in Turnersville right now. And it's about Christ's resurrection. And it's very powerful when the guy sees, when he sees like Christ after they juxtapose. I saw him dead on the cross, a corpse, and I saw him alive in the room, and then he disappears. And you can see this Roman guy's mind is melting. And just imagine us in that position. I just saw someone dead, and I'm going to a funeral today. I'll be walking out of the funeral and seeing Mr. Fox outside. That pretty much blew my mind. That's what happened with Jesus. Real. I mean, you can say, oh my, that's going to change your world and change reality as you know it. So that Roman guy is looking at the rose. He's looking at where the stone is. He's looking at what we now know as the Shroud of Turin. He's looking at all these things. He's putting evidence together. He's meeting people. He's systematically processing. He comes to the conclusion, Jesus is the Messiah. And he gives up being a Roman tribune, which is obviously a fictional story, trying to make some kind of spiritual truth. So, did Jesus rise from the dead? Well, I think he did. Why? Because I'm afraid if that's not true. Because just think through it, right? Why do you believe that? And there's a part where you say it's fake. There's part of it we can't prove, right? Part of it we can't prove. If you could prove Christianity, there'd be no faith. I can give you arguments for why God exists. I can't ultimately prove God exists. I give you arguments. Okay? That's what you're trying to do here. what did the guy, what's he believe in? So you're doing Reagan, whoever you're doing, what did he want to accomplish? What are the big facts, the big rocks? And these, by the way, probably aren't all big rocks. These would be small policy things. But what are the big things he wants to do? Did he do it? What do I think about it? And why do I think that? Okay? So you want to analyze, bring analysis to your paper, not prejudice. So I don't mind if you're defending a guy that I don't like. Defend him well. Or attacking a guy I do like. Attack him well. Make an argument. Okay. Questions on your paper? Any questions? This is how I would do it with Donald Trump if I was writing one. I'd say, here's the things he's saying. Now, right now, do I believe he believes any of those things? Sometimes presidents say things to get elected, doesn't mean they're going to do them. I'm very suspicious of any Republican when they come out and talk, particularly when they talk to a Christian audience, say, pro-life and abortion is evil, and we're gonna roll abortion down, and we're gonna stop abortion. There is yet to be a president that has done virtually anything to stop abortion. And so when Reagan's arguing against that, and then you look at what Reagan spent his time and effort and political capital on doing, yeah, he loved getting what was called moral majority. It was out of Jerry Falwell, so with liberty back then, and there was all these people like, Reagan's going to stop abortion, Reagan. And when Reagan became president, it was about defense spending, other things, and abortion was put way over here. Now, he didn't make it worse. There's other people who make it worse. Okay? And the Supreme Court usually makes it worse. Why the Supreme Court choices are so important. But he didn't do anything to stop it. He didn't defund it. He didn't do any of those things. Because and why? Because when you go after abortion, you have people that hate you on both sides. So if I'm going to be a president and I'm going to work to stop abortion, that's about all I'm ever going to do. And I'm going to be a very unpopular president very quickly because the media is going to come after me, all the liberal elites are going to come after me, many women are going to come after me. I'm going to become very unpopular. And it's a lot of political cost for something I think, you know what? And by the way, the Supreme Court's already ruled it. They talk the game, they don't play the game. Okay? And if you notice, I can be a little bit cynical about politicians, which I think I can support. So you want to think about what's there. So Trump's saying a lot of stuff. Some people that are for Trump right now are saying, I know he's ridiculous up front and publicly. He's just not going to do all these things. He's just trying to make sure that you don't do politically correct speech, right? That's his big thing. I'm not politically correct. I'm just going to tell you what I think. And they're saying, well, he's not actually going to do all this stuff. Okay. You know, how is he going to talk to Putin in China? And so that would be another thing. He wants to do tariffs. That would be another part of his foreign policy. Tariffs. We're going to start putting taxes on, on Chinese goods. But to some degree, he's right. They trade unfair. They tax our goods. They don't let us tax theirs. It's an unfair equation. So, well, is that good or bad? What's that to do? What's the effect of that? So, guys, what they do, why? Okay, and examine that. All right. Any questions? I'm probably talking too much, and you're probably getting overwhelmed and discouraged and depressed. I want you to think. I want you to think about it. Okay? I want you to think about it. And there's ways to be very thoughtful and very strong in your opinions. But be thoughtful. Otherwise, you end up in these places, and be careful, that's a bad illustration, but racists have an opinion. It's not thoughtful. They have an opinion. Get rid of all non-whites. Sick of these Muslims, sick of these minority groups. Get rid of non-whites. America should be white. Especially in Brussels. There's a mass killer in Brussels. I forget how many hundreds of people. Mass killer. And actually, he's suing Brussels. I think it's Belgium. He's suing them or the Netherlands. He lives in his prison cell is like 3 rooms. It's got a TV, a computer, and he's suing them for that he lives in isolation. He's an avowed Nazi. In his trial, he's Heil Hitler. He's okay. He has an opinion. It's a pure prejudicial opinion. Okay, have an opinion. Make sure it's not prejudicial. Okay, that you've thought through your opinion and you can support it. Now he would say in his mind, it's like the opinion of the Southerners. Here's why slavery is justifiable. Why do you think it's not? And you gotta say more than it's because it's wrong. Why is it wrong? And Genesis 1, all men are created equal. There's really only one race, the human race. There's different ethnic groups, one race. All people are made in the image of God. And go to Galatians 3:20, there's no slave or free. Oh, wow, so all made in the image of God, all redeemed by God, God's no respecter of persons. Therefore, racism is completely unbiblical. I'm making an argument to you. What's the argument against the Crusades? It's done in the name of God, right? In the name of Christianity. Why is that wrong? Well, here's why. You make an argument. So you're trying to give facts that also make an argument, okay? So you're going to analyze it. Questions?
So when you talk about an event or a policy and you give some background so you
Yeah.
can verify that you understood what was
Right.
going on, then you're doing an analysis of whether the president's decision was effective or not effective.
Mhm.
You're not giving an opinion about whether you think that was a good decision or not. Am I clear on that?
Well, you're telling why you don't, and when you're doing an analysis, you're bringing a critique. So by implication, you're saying it's not a good decision. So you are by implication bringing a critique to his policy or how he went about his policy. Good policy, let's end terrorism. Everybody would agree with that. But I have to evaluate the means. If we're going to use torture to do that, that's what I'm going after. We're using unjust means to achieve a just ends. Therefore, that leads that. It violates the Constitution. It violates this. Now you've got my argument. Obviously, I have an opinion. We shouldn't do it.
So it's not so much an analysis of the outcome of that decision
Now,
as a historical analysis
Yeah.
of effectiveness, or this showed how
Yeah.
he did such and such
Right.
well or badly.
Right.
It's more of whether you agree that that was a,
yeah. Now it can be. It was ineffective. That's part of it. So the wall, which is a non-moral issue to me, you build a wall. In one sense, you can argue it's moral. To me, it's going to be: is it effective? So I'm gonna probably argue against the wall because I think it's going to be too easy to defeat and it's not worth the cost. So that's going to be purely cost benefit. I might argue America, that's a land of immigrants. Is that the persona we want to create? So we're building walls around us. Where else are we going to build walls? And will building walls here lead to does it have implications to, we start to pursue security over freedom. And we start to sacrifice freedom in the sake of security, which people will do. So I'd still talk about it in that. Those are the ways. So I'm still bringing those kinds of arguments to it. Does that help now? So yeah, I'm still bringing that. So let's say you take Obama. Healthcare, national healthcare, I think is a moral idea. Right? We want to provide healthcare for all the citizens of the country. What sounds immoral about that? Sounds pretty moral to me. Sounds pretty Christian to me, actually. If you want to argue a Christian position, I want to care for you and you and you and you. I want to care for everybody here. I want to make sure you're cared for. You have health insurance, that you have what you need to live, and that you're not going to be bankrupt. I want to care for all of you. Sounds pretty Christian. So really, my critique's going to be in why it doesn't work. I could go into critique of, is the government obligated to do that, or are people personally obligated? That would be that's more the moral side versus the practical side. My big criticism would probably be the government always screws up when they try to take over stuff. They don't do that very well. So I'd argue purely out of pragmatics. But I think moral, it's like a good moral position. I certainly don't have sympathy for the insurance companies who raise our rates 20% every year. You know, so it's not like, they're still. I don't trust the inherent goodness in, of that. And even people who argue today, like business, big business in America, big business. Why do we trust big business? Do you have any clue why we should? The meltdown, the home meltdown. Those guys were all lying. Big business does not have a moral record, historically. So think through your argument. So it's an argument. It could have moral parts. It could have practical parts. But that's how you make your argument. Okay? Any other questions? I know this can sound intimidating. I want to get your feet wet in this kind of stuff. Somewhat. So if you go to college, you want to be thoughtful. And you don't want to be intimidated by somebody who just has more information than you. How do you think through stuff? Which is why we start with the Christian perspective of history and man. You think from that, you've got a leg up on wisdom, and you won't be intimidated with information you don't know, because you'll have, okay, I don't know that yet, so I won't give you answers. I'll assimilate the information, I'll research, I'll come back with answers. And I'm not even asking you to write a paper from a Christian perspective necessarily. I'm not doing that. I want you to write from an analytical perspective. Okay? Good? We're good? Okay. All right. If you have questions, feel free to talk to me about them. Just make sure, because I'll read your papers, I've read enough. If you have some brilliant analysis, I'm like, wow, so you thought of that all by yourself. Or some obscure information, I'm like, wow, how did you discover that? I didn't know that. And maybe it's just because, I've just been reading the New York Times since I was 4 years old, and I used to bet you're just an ignorant person. That's fine, but otherwise, endnote and footnote. Always attribute important information and important thoughts. So it just protects you from any kind of plagiarism. Okay, back to big business and labor. Big business and labor. We've looked at Cornelius Vanderbilt, J.P. Morgan, and the one we left off at the start one was Andrew Carnegie. Cornelius Vanderbilt was railroads. Okay, Morgan was banking. And my notes, I don't know what your notes have, as far as big business. Carnegie is steel. This is C for me. He was the steel industry. Okay. Steel still very important industry in the world. And it shows you whether the world's growing or contracting somewhat. And I wouldn't ask for this fact back, because I think the facts are irrelevant this way. I just want to give you the picture. In 1867, so think right after the Civil War, okay, the United States produced 1,600 tons of steel a year. 1,600. Okay? So in 1867, again, I wouldn't ask for this fact. 1867, we produced 1,600 tons of steel. All right, 1,600 tons of steel. By 1900, that became 7.5 million tons. Okay, so what you can see is exponential growth. Exponential growth. And by the late 1800s, we were the largest steel producer in the world. So to go from an infant industry to dominate the industry and be the largest steel producer in the world was pretty massive. So, 1,600 to 7.5 million tons of steel. So there's a huge production of steel, increase in steel. Now, Andrew Carnegie, a little bit of background on him. I told you he was a rags to riches story. He was a poor immigrant. This is one of the things that makes America great. It's why people still come to America today. It's a land of opportunity. He was a poor immigrant. He started working at age 13, which was not completely uncommon. You live in a different culture. I grew up in a different culture where youth are not expected to work and add to the family value and income. Okay, kids used to be an asset, financial asset in families. They're now a financial liability, and that's been true for 60 years or more, probably 70 years at this point. He was a poor immigrant. He started working at age 13. He's this rags to riches story, Horatio Alger story is what he's called. And by the way, if you ever come across his books, his name is Horatio. I don't know if this was his real name or his pen name, but Horatio Alger. And he wrote what's called Rags to Riches Stories, which, does represent, people like, I don't know if they were rags, but, guys that had no money at one point, so you have a Gates, Jobs, Zuckerman. Is it Zuckerman or Zuckerberg? What's the Facebook guy? Zuckerberg. I mean, they didn't have a lot of money, and then some men, they're billionaires. Versus like Rockefellers that have been billionaires for generations. And he started a company that eventually became U.S. Steel, and by 1900, Carnegie produced about half the steel in all of America. So if steel was being produced, it was pretty much by Carnegie. And he did that, which is interesting, because he even reflects on this later in life. He did that in a number of ways. He became very successful. He bought out his competition. Okay, he bought out his competition, and he outfought labor unions, which is odd because he had been a laborer at one point. He bought out his competition or out-competed them. So he would just come in, he'd buy factories, or he'd buy them out. This is what companies do all the time even today. They call it mergers and acquisitions, takeovers, hostile takeovers. I'm just buying the competition. I'll be the only game in town. And then he also outfought labor unions. Usually, the greatest expense to every business is wages. Okay, that's typically the number one expense to any business is their wages, as far as one single item. So if you want to make more money, you keep wages down. So I taught you last week, about what's the parts company? Cardone. They're moving their brake plant to Mexico. Why? Well, I can pay somebody here $12 to $14 an hour to do this, or somebody $2 an hour. It pays me to move a plant, build a plant, ship the stuff. It's cheaper to do it that way than to keep them employed here. So you're trying to keep wages down. Okay? There's unions that have a lot of power. There's some unions that have very little power. In life right now. So there's unions like we're going to strike unions. They don't have a lot of power. Versus like the baseball players union has enormous power. They win every argument they have. They just keep winning. So they don't want a salary cap. They don't want this. They don't want that. It's like, man, it was historically a strong union. Sports players can have strong unions. There's other people that don't. There was air traffic controllers. This is one of the things Reagan did. They all went on strike because they had really high stress jobs. An air traffic controller, they high burnout level, high stress job. And they at one point said, we want to go on strike. You're not listening. We need better work conditions. We need less hours. We need more money, which is generally what workers always want. Better conditions, less hours, more money, more vacation. That's what they're going to always ask for, better benefits. And the business is like, that's just money going out the door. We don't want to give you that. And that's the tug of war. That's the fight between ownership and workers. And so they went on strike. Reagan fired them all. Every air traffic controller got fired. They said, if I fire you, I'm not hiring you back. And so they got fired. And he effectively broke the union. It was like 13,000 air traffic controllers. They just weren't big enough. And he's like, I'm going to fire you. I'm just going to hire new people. We'll train them. So all the supervisors, management will work the job, and he broke the union. They bluffed, and actually it was illegal for them to strike. They bluffed, he broke it. They didn't bluff, they actually went on strike, and he called it, and he won. Sometimes, teachers go on strike. They have blowouts in the hospitals. Nurses can go on strike. I want more money, better conditions, and less hours. That's how they're right. Well, Carnegie, anytime that happened with Carnegie in the unions, he won. Okay, he won, and there were some famous strikes, and the stacks were at that point. the cards were stacked against the workers. Because the owner of the company is also best friends with the police chief, who's best friends with the judge, and the three of them play golf together and vacation together. And they're in restaurants, they're friends. So guess what? When you were a union guy, you got nobody in any of those fields, and there's nobody standing up for you. And so unions took it on the chin. I mean, left and right. Which is why eventually unions became radicalized and thought about other things and became violent. Actually, they were like, we've got no recourse. So he's doing huge stuff. And eventually, J.P. Morgan, again, the name J.P. Morgan, bought out Carnegie for $500 million, which created U.S. Steel. Now, $500 million around 1900 is, maybe $50 billion today, or more. So $500 million was a huge amount of money. Okay, $500 million is a lot of money today. But if you have a Warren Buffett or Gates who are worth $50 billion, like the guy in India and Mexico, I think the two richest men in the world are from India and Mexico, which tells you something about corruption in those nations. They're well worth more than that. That's a lot of money. Okay, billions. And you start thinking, wow. Well, Carnegie's paid $500 million in 1900 when bread's selling for 2 cents a loaf. So it's a massive amount of money. Now, out of that, he really becomes a philanthropist. You have Carnegie Mellon Institute, you have Carnegie Hall, you have all these things that Carnegie started to do. Carnegie Hospital. You go out Pittsburgh, there's Carnegie stuff all over, New York as well. He really became very generous. So that's Carnegie. And now our next guy is Rockefeller. John D. Rockefeller. He's the most famous. So you're going to New York, the Rockefeller Center, Rockefeller. Rockefeller's a big name, old money. And Rockefeller, he worked, his was oil. His was oil. That's his business. And what he does, he does for oil the same thing Carnegie did for steel. So Carnegie came in, so there's a little steel plant, he buys it. Steel mill, buys it. Iron mine, buys it. Carnegie just buys it all up, and he becomes the giant. Okay, it's like Walmart buys, they don't buy out people, but they just, mom and pop shops just can't survive around Walmart. Carnegie bought these people up. Rockefeller does the same thing in oil that Carnegie did for steel. He also grew up a poor person, so he's very poor growing up, and very religious. Not very happy, but very religious. And he was a Sunday school teacher, never missed church, but nobody would say he was probably a happy man. And he talked about not being happy. So very poor, very religious. He started something called Standard Oil. The company started. It's called Standard Oil. Does anybody know what Standard Oil became? You all know the name. Anybody know what this company became when Rockefeller started? I think it's still the largest company in the world. It was. Right now? Anybody know the largest oil company in the world? I think they're still the largest. They're as big as some countries are, like their economy. It's Exxon. Okay, Exxon Oil. That's what he started. So in the beginning it was called Standard. We now know it as Exxon. I think at one point, if Exxon had been a country, they would have been the 10th largest economy in the entire world. They're one company. Now they're not there anymore because other companies have developed and there's more oil companies, but it was massive. He was very successful, obviously, not only because he was a phenomenal manager and businessman, but he was willing to crush his competitors, and he did. He crushed his competitors without any hesitation. And he eventually controlled 90% of the entire oil business in the United States. So where Carnegie controls 50% of all the steel, he controls 90% of all the oil. And it was what's called, he really became, which is really equals your monopoly at that point. And monopoly is just like the game, just means you control it all. So if you have a monopoly, you have all those properties. You own it, okay? He has 90% of all the oil in the United States. Again, he would crush his opponents. He would go into a town. In some ways, this is why people don't like Walmart, although they don't raise their prices back up. What Rockefeller would do is he would just go into town after town, city after city. He'd come in, open up gas stations, charge less money per gallon than anybody else, drive everybody else out of business. They'd close, he'd buy up their gas stations, and then he'd raise the prices. And then you go to the next town and do the same thing. You know, I'm going to come, I'm going to drive you out of business. I'll lose money. I'll lose money for a year. Why? Because he's profitable in 8 other towns. So he's got all this profit over here. So he goes, well, right now what I'm doing is I'm coming to your town. I'm going to undercut your prices. You know what? They're going to say, you're selling gas below cost. You're losing money every time you sell a gallon of gas. You're losing money. That's okay. I'll drive everybody out of business. I'll buy up their business. And guess what? Because they're bankrupt, I'll buy them cheap. Because you have no choice but to sell. I'll buy your business cheap. I'll buy all your equipment. You're out. I rename it. It's Exxon. I'll shut some down, do other things. And now I come back in, re-raise prices, and I have a monopoly. And he just did that over and over again. So he outfights all his business competition, crushes his competition. And once it's, you know, he had a skill. Wasn't very kind to others, but he had a skill. Controls 90% of the business, and he has what's called both a vertically and horizontally monopoly. Let me try to explain what I mean by that. So it's a monopoly, and it's horizontal and vertical. Horizontal and vertical. Horizontal means this, okay? I own all the gas stations, okay? I own all the stores. I own that. That's horizontal. I own one part of the process. I own all this. Vertical is I own the entire process. Okay, I own the entire process. So vertically integrated company is I own the land, I own the well, I own the drills, I own the trucks. That's vertical. I own the process from beginning to end. Think about food. Food can get vertically integrated, but in the beginning it was like, well, who owns the food? Well, the farmers. Farmers actually buy seed from somebody over here. They plant crops or raise cattle. They then sell that to a slaughterhouse who then sells it to a market. Now, actually, you've had sometimes big market chains because everything consolidates. They now say, we're going to buy farms. We're going to buy out all the small farmers. We now own all the farms. You more or less work for us. And you don't own the farm. We own the farm. You work on the farm. And they're not independent growers anymore. So sometimes you'll see that. Independent grower, local grower, which means we're not owned by some big corporation in some other state that's doing this. So vertically integrated means I control the whole process. So literally they would say, I own this part of Texas. I dug the well. We own the well. We own the drill. We own the truck. We own the refinery where it's going to take the oil and make it into gas. And we own the gas station. You own it from beginning to end, which means you're going to make money all along the process. So if you don't own that, somebody else is making money, right? So we can say oil, and oil right now we're awash in oil, but when we weren't, Saudi Arabia was making a ton of money. Because guess what? You have the refineries, you have the gas stations, you guys have the cars, and we got the oil, and you need it. So we're going to charge you such and such. We're going to charge you, I think oil went over $120 a barrel. Down to under 30 now, around 30. And that's why you see gas prices where they are. Because there's a market. It's not vertically owned as much in the same way. Rockefeller owns it all, so he's vertical, so nobody can come in and nail him at any price point. I control it from beginning to end, which means I control production, how much do we want to put out, I control it all. And not only do I control it all this way, I control it all this way. So there's no competition. Now eventually, this is where laws start to be passed that you cannot have a monopoly. Like, AT&T used to have a monopoly on phones, and now you have Sprint. They're not allowed to do things. Anybody's allowed to run their signals. So even though AT&T put up all these poles and wires, Sprint can get on that, and you know, all the other phone companies can use their towers. You can't have a monopoly the same way. And they're trying to create competition into the system, which would lower prices, which we don't have, by the way, with insurance, health insurance. There's no competition, which, by the way, I think Trump's for that, and I would agree with him. Start opening up states so you can have true competition, which in New Jersey, our insurance rates would go down, probably dramatically. So that's who Rockefeller is. He became a billionaire, okay? So he becomes a billionaire. He's the world's first billionaire. So Carnegie, $500 million, he's worth $1 billion, over $1 billion. Rockefeller money is big money and it's old money. Okay, so, and then the last category is just what I'm gonna sort of call other big names in this time period. Again, we're in business and labor, the rise of big business and labor. The Industrial Revolution is what we're looking at. And this is just other big players.